Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Eye on the Ball. I'm Steve Rivera, and you're listening to 1030 The Voice. It's a big day for Eye on the Ball. I have a co-host. His name is Jay Gonzalez, a longtime sports guy. I call him the sports guy. He's been in Tucson all his life. I covered a lot of big events through the years. Jay, welcome.
I'm happy to be here, Steve. I'm excited. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. I think we're going to have a lot of cool things to talk about, so I'm excited to be here.
And nobody wants to listen to me for an hour.
I'll listen to you for an hour, Steve. I have for a while, so we're good.
That's good. That's good. Jay, most recently was the president of the Sugar Skulls. We'll kind of get a little into that. But he's been, you've probably seen more UA men's basketball games than most people. We'll explain that. Football as well in the last 30, 40 years. We'll talk about that too. But you've seen a lot of things happen in 40 years.
I've been here I'm a native, so I was born here. I mean, I can remember going to football games at the U of A when my brothers were in band at Sunnyside High School, and so I would have been little. And so I've been going to U of A Stadium since forever.
Not whole gang as usual?
I sat in the Not Whole Gang in junior high and high school. I often snuck out of there with my friends because they were pretty strict about keeping us in there. But we would sneak out and go sit in other places at Arizona Stadium. We used to ride the bus, the Broadway bus from the east side to go to the games. I was here. I started going to U of A basketball games when Fred Snowden got here. So I didn't recall going to any games at Bear Down, but the year that McHale opened up, so I used to start going to the games there. And so I mean, I've been through it all. I've seen a lot of it, and I've had a great time. I love U of A sports, and I just love sports in Tucson. So.
No, that's good to know. Obviously, I've known that about you for a while. In fact, I was surprised. Javier Morales of AllSportsTucson.com did a nice profile on you to announce this and your situation with the Sugar Skulls. And I'm thinking, Jay, 60? I said, you have pretty good genes. I thought you were like 58.
I shouldn't have told anybody. My wife said, "Why did you tell him you were 60?" I'm like, okay, I did, but. Really, when I tell people I've been around for 40 years, that's 40 years in the business. And I started at the Arizona Daily Star when I was still in college. I got a job working covering high school sports. Went over to the Star full time when I graduated from the U of A with a journalism degree. And I've pretty much been in the media ever since. So 40 years it's actually really 41.
41. In fact, your offspring are in the business as well. So they must have been impressed by what you were doing or are crazy.
Well, my son Adam, who's now working in the media relations office in the athletic department, he was going to games when he could still sit on my wife's lap. I think, as a lot of people know, I've been a statistician for U of A basketball. I just finished my 30th year. We've always... we started taking them to games way back then. They pay us with season tickets, so my wife would go to the game. She'd take my son, and he'd sit on her lap with a bucket of popcorn, and then they'd come down to the floor where I was at finishing up the day, and he'd run around on the court. And there's a few of the boys in the sports information office that do that. Danny Martinez was the same thing. His dad worked in the athletic department. He used to come down, and he's got basically the same job as my son Adam.
So 30 years ago, so 1990 or 91? When did you?
It was the 91 season.
Mm-hmm.
So it was the 90-91 season. So I started in 1990.
Yeah.
It's been 30 seasons.
So it's when I kind of started covering the team on the day-to-day. So in that time, how many games have you actually missed?
Less than 10.
Oh, so you've not many. I wouldn't think that you...
I've had to miss a few. I remember I missed one. I didn't miss any this last season. The season before I missed one because a good friend of mine, who I'll give a shout out to, Larry Lucero, was named the Greater Tucson Leadership Man of the Year, and I had to go to his dinner because he went to mine when I won that award in '98. So I missed one game in the season before this. And then, I missed games because of an illness, or I might have had to be somewhere, or my job, or something like that. But it's less than 10.
Yeah.
And then in the last 3 years, I've taken on women's basketball, being that, again, my son Adam, who's the sports information person for women's basketball, he asked me to do that for them, and I do it as well.
Yeah, I've missed 4 in that time, home games at least, in that time. And I thought maybe you were about that same area. The guy that in the book that I wrote, the guy they hadn't missed before Khalil, because Khalil was all of them, is Brian Jeffries.
He's always there.
He's always there, flying from wherever to get back.
Well, if you recall, he that year that the U of A played in the New Mexico Bowl, he went and did that game, raced home, and then did the Florida-Arizona game, that basketball game that night.
So would you, because you know history going back that far, and some people think that's the greatest day in Arizona sports history outside of a title.
It was a great day, and that was so much fun. And I knew people who went to the New Mexico Bowl, and I did the basketball game that night, and I remember watching that game and thinking it looked bad for a really long time.
Both games.
Yeah, it just looked bad for a long time, and then to win both of those games. Occasionally, I'll go back on YouTube, and there's somebody posted I think it's the U of A posted a video where they kind of mix the highlights of both games coming together at the end, and I still get goosebumps from that one. That was such a great day.
Yeah, it was. It was. They came back against New Mexico or Nevada. Who was it?
It was against Nevada. It was the New Mexico Bowl against Nevada, and then they played Florida down here, and Mark Lyons threw in a shot at the buzzer to win that game.
Right. No, I remember that day very well because. Well, it was one of the best sports days for Tucsonans because it was just a crazy, crazy day. A lot of fun. We're going to do a lot of that. We're going to go reminiscing about a lot of things. Some of the guys you covered, some of the favorite interviews you've had because you were right before I came here in '87. So you have the Sean Elliott experience. You have the Steve Kerr experience, the Pete Williams because I was not here at that time.
Right. I started covering sports in 1985. And I was the basketball writer for a couple of years. And then I was the football writer for a couple of years. Covered the Dick Tomey teams, and actually became a very good friend of Dick's to all the way to the end. We played baseball together in this town and did a lot of things. And so I feel like I know a lot of people, and I've known a lot of people over the years. I hope people don't get bored with the stories, but we're going to have a lot of stuff to talk about what's going on now as well, because sports has been a big part of my life, and I'm happy to have a chance to share that with everybody.
Yeah, and we'll reminisce a lot. In fact, anybody who wants to call in and say hello to Jay, please do, 790-2040. You'll learn, as I learned, that you got to say the number a lot because I don't say it often enough. But people are listening. They sometimes just don't call.
Yeah, and we would love to have people call in because I think we want to talk about what you want to talk about.
Right.
So we really want to have people give us a shout. Again,
if they disagree with us, let us know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Look, I've got positions, and we're going to go into some of that. I've got some things that I want people to know where I stand on certain things, and then we'll go from there. I think some people will be surprised at who some of my favorite professional teams are, or the fact that I don't have some in some sports and those kinds of things.
Right.
But I want people to know where we're coming from when we're talking about stuff.
Right. You want to take our first break, Tom? Let's do that right now. Here at 6:14. Come back and talk more about Jay's background and some of the teams that we'll love to hate. Here on 1030 The Voice. Hey, welcome back to Eye on the Ball here on 1030 The Voice. I'm your host, Steve Rivera, along with my other co-host, Jay Gonzalez. Jay, so let's kind of get some background for you. I know you're a big baseball guy. You'll talk about the team you love. You're a big football guy. Not so much, I don't think. More baseball than football?
When it comes to just the sports that I love the most, college football is my favorite thing. Mm-hmm. I'll sit down and I'll watch a bad college football game.
And the obvious team is,
and I'm a huge Arizona fan. I bleed for that. It's so bad that I've told myself I'm not going to go to a Rose Bowl until the U of A goes to a Rose Bowl, and I haven't. And I'm running out of time, so we need to get there pretty soon.
Well, you talked about it because your father. Tell me the story about your dad.
The story about my dad was, so if you recall, when the U of A got into the Pac-10. Actually, it was the Pac-8. It became the Pac-10 when Arizona ASU got in 1978. That was the first football season. And when the announcement was made, I remember I'm little. I'm not that little. I guess I was in high school. Oh, no, I was in college. But anyways, I was living at home, and I was telling my dad we're going to get to go to the Rose Bowl. And my dad, being my dad, who was a devout U of A football fan, but he said, we're never going to the Rose Bowl. And I'm like, why would you say that? So he actually said that he would pay for us to go to the first Rose Bowl. And we actually wrote a contract on a piece of notebook paper that he signed, and he said he would pay for myself and my brothers. I have 3 older brothers, and I have 2 younger sisters, and I don't know that they even cared about that at the time. But anyways, he would pay for myself and my 3 brothers to go to the Rose Bowl, all expenses paid. and we made him sign it. We had that paper for a really long time. And, as everybody knows, we still haven't been there. And in fact, at my dad's, when my dad passed away and at his funeral, I got up and gave the eulogy. And there were a lot of U of A people in the seats, and there were some former U of A football players who I'd been friends with from playing on a City League baseball team, Chris Lopez, and a couple of others being the ones. And I don't remember if Dick was there, but if Dick Tomey was there. But during the eulogy, I called them all out, saying that my dad died before we got to the Rose Bowl, and I said, we need to get on this. And, we're still not there. Now, I'm 60 years old, and I'm starting to think I'm running out of time. My older brother, Rick, is 70. He's definitely running out of time. So we need to get there. We need to get there soon.
That's funny. Who's paying for it?
Well, now we're going to have to pay for it. So, but
that's okay.
I don't really care. Let's just get there.
Yeah, no question. Okay, so that's football. No protein.
I was a huge Johnny Unitas fan as a kid. Now, probably
Baltimore?
half the population in this town doesn't know who Johnny Unitas is, and
Sure.
I don't even really know why. I just loved him. I had my brother painted one of those football helmets that you get at the department store with the uniform, and I had the Colts horseshoe painted on the helmet. I just love Johnny Unitas. I cried the day they lost to the New York Jets in the Super Bowl, and then they won a Super Bowl a couple of years later. So I was just a huge Johnny Unitas fan. But really, since then, since he retired, I've not really had a favorite NFL team.
Yeah, you're better off. Mondays are fine.
Well, people ask me, so who's your favorite NFL team? Because I wear some gear. My son is a 49ers fan, and I've got a couple of 49ers T-shirts. I got an Indianapolis Colts T-shirt from Sports Illustrated one time, and people have asked me, are you a Colts fan or are you a 49ers fan? And I pretty much say I'm a fan of the team that I've bet on this weekend, and that's pretty much
it. True. Yeah, every team that you cover. So that's football. Baseball?
Baseball, grew up a Dodger fan.
Mm-hmm.
If you grew up in Tucson, Arizona, until the Diamondbacks came around, you were a Dodger fan. We got the Dodgers on the radio.
Proximity.
Right. We got the Dodgers on the radio. We were in their territory. And so I can remember, when I was 5-6 years old, listening to Dodger games at home. I went to Dodger Stadium the first time the summer I turned 6 years old. I got to see Sandy Koufax throw. So we were huge Dodger fans. I had some cousins that lived in Southern California, so every other summer we would go there and go catch a couple of games and go to Disneyland and the whole bit. So I grew up a Dodger fan. I lost my mind for a while and became a Diamondbacks fan when I was involved through my job at Tucson Electric. I was involved in the naming rights of Tucson Electric Park, and so we had a relationship with them, and I became a Diamondbacks fan.
That was short-lived, I assume.
It was short-lived, partly because they kind of abandoned us down here, and I've kind of was unhappy about that.
So tell me, because I didn't experience it, I was in high school at the time, I think, Fernando Mania. How was it in this town?
Oh, madness. I actually, during spring training, his rookie year, so that was the year of 81. It was 81. It was the strike. It was the season where they had a strike in the middle of the year. I happened to be in Phoenix for a class that I had to take at the U of A. It was a reporting class where I had to go to the legislature and get a couple of stories. And I got there and I found out that the Dodgers were passing through on the way to L.A. and they played a spring training game on an evening game against the Giants, and then the next day they were playing against the Cubs. And I went to both games and I got a baseball at the Cubs game. So, I'm 21 years old, and I waited outside the locker room and I got his autograph on that baseball.
Oh, you still have it?
Well, unfortunately, it was with a bad pen, and the autograph kind of wore off. I kept the baseball. I had it for a long time, but over time the autograph wore off.
Oh, yeah. You got to give it to Francisco Romero. He'll find a way to get it. Because you printed it again.
Well, I don't even have it anymore because the signature was gone.
Right.
But I did get his autograph before it all started.
Yeah. And I grew up in Santa Fe, so I'm assuming the Hispanic community here went bonkers.
It was huge. Another funny story behind that. There are a few people who accuse me of looking like him from time to time, and so one time I was at an Arizona baseball game at the old Sunset Stadium, and I had one of the Dodger satin jackets. It was kind of a cold night.
So mid-'80s.
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
And I'd gone to the restroom and I had the jacket on, and as I'm walking out, I walk by two kids, probably 10 years old, and they're saying, "That's him. I know it's him. It's him. It's him. Go ask him. It's him. I think it's him." And I kind of looked back to take a look at him, and they kept saying, "It's him. It's him." And I just turned around and said, "I'm not Fernando." And they were kind of disappointed. I think they wanted me to be.
Were they young Hispanic kids?
Yeah, they were young Hispanic
kids.
They thought they thought they had met Fernando Valenzuela, but I said, "Guys, sorry, I'm not him."
Yeah, that's funny. It's a funny story. No, so the Dodgers and basketball?
Never an NBA fan.
No.
I follow it from the standpoint of knowing about it. I've been watching The Last Dance. That's been on ESPN these last couple of weekends with a lot of interest because, I was around during the Michael Jordan era and I paid attention to that enough to know that, I'm sorry to all the guys who have argued about this over the last couple of weeks.
Yes.
Nobody better than Michael Jordan, not LeBron, not Kobe, not anybody. He's the guy, will always be the guy, and I'm sorry, that's one of my positions I'm taking, and I'm sticking with it.
I totally agree with you. I had a fortunate chance to cover him on a couple of occasions. Now that you look back at the tape and how smooth he was.
He was it was just so effortless. It was just so effortless, and he just did whatever he wanted to do. People talk about the fact that, he won those 6 championships, but maybe some of the teams weren't as good as some of the teams that say a Steph Curry faces now or something like that. But I'm sorry, he was going to beat whoever you put in front of him, and that's just the way it was.
Right, no question. Once he got through the door, it was hard to shut it on him.
Exactly. So, but again, so from an NBA standpoint, I watch some NBA. I watch a lot more of it now because I have to watch that to be able to have conversations with my kids.
Let me ask you something. Before that show was started, the dance was showing. Well, it's going to look bad on him because of how he is as a person. He's a hard ass. But don't you know, in the people you covered, the winners who win are like that?
Winners and coaches are like that.
Yeah.
Show me a coach who's just an all-around, total nice guy.
They don't exist.
100% of the time, he's not going to win games.
No.
And I'm telling you, I love Dick Tomey. He was a good friend of mine. But I stood outside his locker room a couple of times, and I heard some things. So, there's an intensity that somebody at that level has to have. And if they don't have it, they're not going to win.
No, they have to have that. And if they have that, they have to have the second guy be the nice guy.
Right, but they have to channel it correctly. Dick, again, I loved him to death, and Dick was a guy that, he'd yell at you and then he'd put his arm around you and hug you. Other coaches don't do that, and those are the ones that go awry.
I think you relate a story with your son when he was a kid, but did he yell at you a time or two? Well, I know your son's story is a great story.
Actually, Dick and I had a great relationship when I was a reporter, partly because he just wanted somebody to be fair.
Yeah,
that's all he asked anybody.
He ripped me one time.
All he asked was to be fair. One of the funny moments that I'll tell you, again, storytelling time, right? They had beaten Oregon in a really tough game. It was like a 45-38 game or something like that. And so we're standing outside the locker room. The locker room opens up. We all race to talk to him. He's gotten off his show. And one of the TV guys put a microphone in front of him and his question was, "Not pretty, but a win's a win. Is that right, Coach?" And Dick put his hand over the microphone and yelled at the guy and said, "Do you know how hard it is to win a football game? It is really hard. You have no idea how hard it is." And he took his hand off the microphone. He said, "Now let's start over." so the reporter just said, "Tell us what you think, Coach." And he went on and did a great interview, and you never would have known he was mad.
Right. No, he got on me one time. I flew with the team on the charter flight all the time, and I reported something that I didn't know I was not supposed to, and he pulled me aside like on one of those Monday conversations that ripped me a new one in front of people, and I'm thinking, oh man, I never seen him in this place.
No, actually, one time he expected me to rip him. Because a player had gotten arrested after a football game, and he had fired a gun at a
Kip Lewis or Kip.
No, it was Melvin Smith.
Melvin Smith
fired a gun at a roller skating rink that he was hanging out at after a game, and he got arrested. And so I had to cover that, and having been a police reporter and a courthouse reporter, I kind of knew how to cover those things, and I just covered it as an incident. And Dick expected that I was going to write a story basically ripping the U of A for the fact that they had this kid on their team. And that wasn't the story. The story was a U of A football player got arrested for shooting a gun at an incident. And that was it. And on Monday morning, when that story came out and I saw him at practice, he said, "You really went easy on me." And I said, "Coach, there wasn't anything to go easy on. All it was an incident that had to be reported."
Yeah, I think it was 1988 because I was covering the team back then.
Right.
But you're right.
It was the 88-89 time frame because those are the two teams that I covered.
Let's take a quick break here on 10:30 The Voice. Come back on the other side. Hey, welcome back to Eye on the Ball here on 10:30 The Voice. I'm Steve Rivera with my co-host Jay Gonzalez. Jay's first day. So you've covered a ton of games. Did you cover Kindle?
Yes, I did. I covered Jerry Kindle. I had the team that Trevor Hoffman, J.T. Snow, Lance Dixon, Alan Zinter, a bunch of pros. They won. They won what was then called the six-pack back then, if you recall. The Pac-10 was divided in baseball, and they had 16. It was called the Pac-12 Southern Division, but they would call it the Pac-10 Southern Division. They called it the six-pack. It was Cal and Stanford, UCLA, USC, Arizona, and ASU, and then the northern teams were in a different league, and I think they had Portland State and one other team to give them 6 teams. But it was considered the strongest league in the country at the time. ASU and USC and Stanford and Arizona were winning national championships all over the place during that period of time. So I did catch a couple of teams.
How many? 2 years?
I did that 2 years. The way it worked at the Arizona Daily Star, if you were the football writer, then you were the baseball writer. Because it was opposite seasons. So I did 2 years as the beat writer covering football. So those 2 years I covered baseball. And I did cover that team. That Scott Erickson was on that team, another major leaguer.
That was like 1990.
1989, I think it was. And then they got into the regional, hosted a regional, and lost.
Yeah.
Got beat by Long Beach State.
I remember that. Okay, so Kindle, Lute, maybe 2 years?
No, I had Lute for the 2 years, but then even though I was the football writer, I was the backup basketball guy. So I would cover visiting locker room or whatever sidebar for home games, and then I covered them in the NCAA tournament. So really the last college basketball game I covered as a writer was that awful game that they lost to Alabama in the second round of the NCAA tournament in Long Beach.
Yeah, Long Beach.
I did have the experience of covering that Loyola Marymount team that went crazy during that.
They were there. Yeah.
I was there for that.
Yeah.
But I remember when we were done writing and leaving the arena, I just walked back out onto the floor at the arena. I said, "This is my last game," because I knew at that time I was leaving sports.
Yeah, no. I remember I was in Long Beach. Brian Williams,
Judd Bushler, Matt Muehlbach. Matt Othick were all on that. I think Matt Othick was a freshman on that team.
Yeah. They lost to Alabama. I remember that weekend in Long Beach.
That was a terrible loss. Luke got mad at me after that one.
Because why? You didn't score any points.
Well, he got mad at me because at the end, instead of going to the visiting locker room, they asked me to do a story on the seniors.
So you were a sidebar guy?
I was the sidebar guy. John Wilner, who's in San Jose now, he was the beat writer for the team, so he covered the game, and Greg Hansen was there, and I was the other guy, and they told me go do a story on the seniors, so I went in there, and
not a good time.
It was not a good time, but Judd Bushler, I loved him to death. He was one of my favorite guys over there because, you could always talk to him and he was just always really honest with you. And so I walked in the locker room. I knew Judd was a captain, so I went straight for Judd. And I just said 2 words. I said, "What happened?"
Yeah.
And Judd kind of went off. And he basically said, "We weren't ready. We came out flat. I don't know why we weren't ready, but we weren't ready."
Yeah.
And I was like, how could you not be ready? How could you be flat for an NCAA tournament game?
Right.
And he was really at a loss. And it was hard to explain. And I interviewed Brian Williams during that too, and they kind of both said the same thing. We just came out not ready to play. Well, that's what I wrote.
Yeah.
Well, Luke got mad because he thought it made him look bad. Well, it did make him look bad because how do you not get your team ready?
Totally understand.
And that was during a period of time where he would say, and he said it a lot of times, it's not up to me to get you motivated for a game. And he's right.
Yeah.
But in that instance, he got mad at me for writing that.
Yeah, well, he should have said that to the kids. No, I get it. But at the end of the day, that happened a lot.
Well, sure. You know, and you know, we had incredible access during that period of time, and so we got to report a lot of things that don't get reported now.
Right.
And it's it was an interesting time to do that, and we had, you know, we had that kind of access. So players said things that in the end coaches might not want them to say. I mean, I think I actually might have committed a couple NCAA violations. I took Sean Elliott out for pizza.
Yeah.
When I did my it was the '88 season, and we were getting ready to go into the NCAA tournament, and I had to do the season recap with Sean Elliott's story, and he invited me to his dorm. I went to his dorm. I asked if he was hungry. He said he was, and we went and got pizza.
Yeah.
You can't do that now.
No, that was the good old days. 'Cause
Yeah.
I did the same thing later on. Now you don't even know who their roommates are. You don't know anything about any of them.
Sure. I mean, people might be unhappy to hear that. You know, during that conversation, when we were in the car going to get the pizza, we started talking. He started talking to me personally because he was talking about going to the NBA after his junior year. He was a local kid and the whole bit. And he asked me what he thought I should do or what I thought he should do. And I told him, I said, you got to go. I said, how do you not go? So you're going to be player of the year. You got to go. I said, now, if your mom says you can't go, then you better not go.
Right.
But he said, well, what are the fans going to say? I said, who cares what the fans are going to say? Right. This is not about the fans. This is not about the media. This is not about anybody else but you. This is not even about Coach. I called him Coach to him. I called him Lute otherwise. But I said, this is not even about Coach Olson. This is about you. So it's your decision, and I think you got to go. And he ended up not going. I was stunned when he didn't go.
Well, Lute has this story that he took him to a game when he was for the John Wooden Award, and took him down, and they sat really close to the arena, to the bottom of the floor, and he says, look what you're going to have to be going against. Yeah. And he realized he was not ready yet.
It may have been that. Plus, I know his mom wanted him to finish school, and that was a big deal. But, so, again, that's the kind of access that we had back in that in that time frame.
Definitely the good old days. Who was covering the team in the early 80s, mid-80s, when Pete Williams was here and they really came on the scene?
That was a guy named Jim Elslager. He's the guy that I replaced.
Good guy.
Yeah, he was a really good guy.
Good writer.
He was a good writer, just a kind of a very low-key guy. Sometimes in the newsroom he didn't say 3 words, but he was a good writer, and I got his position when the time came. I had been in the sports department about a year. I did spring training. I covered the Toros. I covered the golf tournament, and so I was kind of the guy who covered everything that wasn't U of A. And then I got the assignment, and I got the assignment for the 86-87 season, which was the year that Steve Kerr was on the sidelines with the injury. They didn't have him that year, and they got into the NCAA tournament, got beat in the first round at McHale, and I covered that team. But then I covered the Final Four team. Yeah. So
when you first got that position with Lute covering the team, were you excited about it? Was it I know when I took over the team and Dave Petruska was between Dave and I, and none of us really wanted it because he had that reputation of I don't like the media.
I was excited because it was. To me, because it was about me. I had arrived as a sports writer in this town
to cover the thing.
To cover the thing. Yeah. And I grew up in this town. I threw the newspaper. I was a morning paper boy. I'd get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and go throw the newspaper. And I read the newspaper. I read Bob Moran and I read Dave Adam and all these guys who came before me and who were still in the newsroom when I got there to work as a reporter. So I was excited because I was covering the big time, at least as it related to Arizona. Let me ask you,
and we'll talk about this a lot as the season comes up with football. You've seen football emerge and not emerge and emerge, and basketball does what it does. Why isn't football as successful as it, maybe not as it should be, but just why isn't it to that level?
I think a big part of it has to do with just the recruiting disadvantages that they have. They can't churn the players that the USCs and the Alabamas and everybody else. They're just not. They got to get lucky and get players and get guys that out of the weeds. And that's just hard to do. Let's
assume for a second, and I hate to assume, and I hate to do this. Let's assume they had someone Saban-like or Meyer-like. they're not going to be afford those guys. But if they had that, could Tucson be that place?
I believe it could. People say that we're a basketball town. I disagree.
I know we've talked about that.
I completely disagree. We're a football town. We just haven't had a consistent, great football program here. I think if we did, if Tucson did, that people would be all over the football, and because that's the first love, and that's what's been around the longest. And so I think this is a football town. I think if you got a coach like that could win consistently, recruit consistently, like some of these SEC teams that are in these small towns, but yet they get those players, and it could happen. I just don't know if that's possible. A lot of things would have to converge. It'd have to be the right coach, the right atmosphere, and you've got to get the players. And it's really that. I think it could happen. We got close a couple of times. Dick had that 12-1 team. They had the Fiesta Bowl team in '93. It could happen. I don't know that Arizona will ever be consistently good. I'm just still really mad that we haven't gone to a Rose Bowl.
Are you surprised that he wasn't able to sustain that? Because he had it. He had it, and then it just kind of went away.
I never understood why it didn't happen. At that time, I was a believer in cycles. That you got groups of players in cycles. You got them. You were bad for a couple of years, and then they matured and they became good teams. And that's how it seemed to work with Dick. I don't know. I really don't know. I recall after that 12-1 season, they really tried to up their recruiting and really went after a lot of guys, got close and then didn't get them.
Well,
and
that Penn State game kind of
that killed everything.
That momentum that they had, everyone was excited. The SI cover.
Right, that Penn State game killed everything. I hated that day. I really hated that day. I did not go.
Because that was a big game.
We almost went.
Yeah.
We almost went. We thought about going.
As a fan.
Yeah. We thought about going, but it was just going to be too hard to get there and get back.
Yeah.
And so we didn't go. And we watched it here. We actually, we had a large group of people, went to my brother's house. We put it on a big screen with a projector so we could watch it big. And we stopped watching it at halftime. It was awful.
Yeah, that was who was the linebacker for Penn State?
LeVar Arrington.
That's right.
God.
That's right.
I asked Dick about that one time. I said, Dick, what happened that day? He said, it was so funny, just deadpan. He said, they killed Keith Smith. They killed Keith Smith. That's what happened. That's all. As soon as they killed him, it was over.
Right.
Because remember, he got crushed early in the game on a play, and he said they killed Keith Smith, and that was the ball game.
The confidence went up. Let's take a quick break, our last break here before the next segment. Come back here on Eye on the Ball. Hey, welcome back to Eye on the Ball here on 1030 The Voice. I'm Steve Rivera with my co-host Jay Gonzalez. Day one. Got about 10 minutes left. So, Jay, I know you're excited about the show. What do you kind of want to start to talk about? We're gonna reminisce about all this stuff that we just did. But what are the things that you kind of really want to get to?
Well, obviously we've got all this stuff going on with what's going to happen with sports here in the next several months. It's it's obviously a terrible situation that everybody's in, and we all want sports back. We've also got to figure out how we're going to do that and make sure that everybody can do it safely. People aren't being put in jeopardy for the sake of having sports. I want sports back as much as anybody,
right?
And I really do. But I think that there's we have to be careful.
There's no really right answer.
There isn't right now, and that's the thing. People are in situations like this. People generally tend to be impatient. They want answers.
Sure.
They want to know what's the answer. There isn't one yet. And it's funny because I was watching the Adia Barnes press conference this morning, and reporters were asking her, what's going to happen. She goes, I have no idea what's going to happen.
Right.
And she doesn't. If there's anybody who's close to what's going on at McKale, she is.
Right.
And even she doesn't know what's going on. We just don't know. And at some point, we will know, but we don't know now. And we may know tomorrow, but I doubt it.
Right.
But it may be a week, it may be 2 weeks, and it changes every day. And that's been one of the issues that I think that's hardest for people right now is what's happening and people saying, I don't know.
Right. And the one thing I think we do know is when things do open up athletically, fans won't be allowed in.
It's going to be slow. It's going to be slow. I mean, I like the fact that the PGA Tour is going to start playing because they can do that.
Yeah.
They can just go play with cameras and no fans, and that'll give us something to gamble on if we want to. But I just feel like people just want answers. Uncertainty is what bothers people more than anything, and I think I've learned that through the years, whether it's been in business or as a writer or whatever. It's the uncertainty that kills people, and there's more uncertainty now than any of us probably have experienced in our entire lives.
No question. Do you remember the week all this happened? I was doing the show with Tom, and I'm thinking, I can't believe it. This was like a Tuesday. I can't believe this day has come. And then Wednesday, it got worse.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, holy moly.
Normally I would have been at the Pac-12 basketball tournament.
That was that week?
Until I got my gig at the Sugar Skulls. I couldn't go, but I worked the Pac-12 tournament ever since it started. They started playing it in Las Vegas. So I normally would have been there. But I knew a lot of people who were there, and I was in contact with them with text messages and stuff, and it was surreal to see what was happening, that they were having games, then they're not, we're going to have games, but we're not going to have fans, and then now we're not going to have games at all, and talking to people about what happened over there, how did it actually come together,
right?
And they were saying, I was just in my room, and I got a text message and says there's no game, and that's the last thing I heard,
right.
And I left.
Right.
It's really weird how that all came together.
Right. And you go to Vegas every now and again. That town is deserted.
It's a ghost town.
It's
to see the streets with no cars on them, no people on them, all that kind of stuff. It's, it's funny because I remember when the rumors started to swirl that the NCAA tournament was going to get called. And I'm like, no, it's not. No, it's not. We're talking the NCAA tournament. They're going to figure out a way to play this.
Right.
If whether they played in late April or May, they're going to figure out a way. And when it got called, I remember the first tweet I saw that said, it's getting called. I'm like, stop it.
Yeah.
And then it did.
Right.
And then
everything.
And then everything stopped. And it all just stopped. That was the weirdest thing. But that, look, there's still lots to talk about, and we'll have lots to talk about.
Sure.
But, like everybody else, we want the games to start. That's the most fun.
Right. Now that you're here, we can talk about the game situations that are going on. The show was a lot about reminiscing, and we're still going to do that with your connections and my connections to the past. So I'm looking forward to that because I just heard, your story about Sean asking you about that. I had never heard that story. And then him deciding to come back.
Well, I haven't told that story to a lot of people because, like I said, I think that was an NCAA violation to buy him pizza that day.
His wooden award has.
I did the same thing with Steve Kerr. I took him to Sausage Deli for the day that I spent a whole day interviewing him. Yeah. And again, it was the kind of access that we had.
Well, back then too. Let me ask you, who was the better interview, Steve Kerr or Sean Elliott?
Oh, Steve Kerr by a lot.
Yeah,
by a lot.
Right.
He was funny. I loved him to death. We had such a great time. I picked him up at practice on a Saturday. He had this. Again, you think about where he is now. He had this grungy bike. It wasn't even a 10-speed. It was just a bike, and we threw it in the back of my car. And I gave him, and I said, I'll take you home, and we'll just go talk. And we went to Sausage Deli. We got some sandwiches, and then we went to his apartment.
Yeah.
And he was rooming with Bruce Frazier, and we sat there. And it was October, so it was a Saturday. So we had football on. And we just talked.
Yeah.
We just talked the whole day.
It was really good old days.
And try that now. Try that.
Oh, no.
It never happened. But, I learned a lot about him. We talked about his dad and his family and all the things. We talked about missing that season that he missed and how much. This was before the season. So this was before we knew how good they were going to be. I think he knew.
87, 88.
Yeah, it was the 87, 88 season. I think he knew. Now, he wasn't letting on because he didn't want to sound like he was talking big.
Yeah.
But I think he knew.
Yeah. Well, he wouldn't know because they were practicing against each other every day. Right. And they just love beating the crap out of people.
Oh, they did. That was a team that would step on people's necks and not let them up.
Right.
I'm constantly having that argument with the next generation, my kid and all his buddies. And I say, sorry, guys. I don't care what you think of the 2001 team, the 2005 team, any of Sean Miller's teams. The 88 team would have kicked all of them.
See, here we go with our first argument. I think the 2001 team was fantastic. I love the 88 team because they were good. But I think I just think the 2001 team to me was the best team. Maybe I'm biased because I was
Yeah,
there with
because
them.
you saw it.
And 88, I was here, but I didn't cover it. But, Gilbert and Jason and Luke and Lauren and Richard and Michael Wright. But, hey, Steve Kerr.
Kerr,
Craig McMillan.
Elliott, Craig McMillan, Anthony Cook, who was the premier shot blocker in the country
Tolbert.
that year. Tom Tolbert, who was just a beast. I mean, he was a 6'7" center who just moved people out of the way.
Yeah.
And
it was Tucson's first love.
right. And you know what? And the thing about those guys is that they loved each other so much. It
Yeah.
was,
Yeah.
I mean, we got to travel on the road with them. I mean, there were times when my hotel room on the road was on the same floor as the
Yeah.
team,
Uh-huh.
and you could hear them. They were just having fun.
Right.
And,
right.
and you knew that something special was going on. Well, you recognized that pretty early on.
hmm No, you covered basketball or sports in general. If the team doesn't get along, it's not going to, no matter how talented
Right.
they're just not going to.
Well, that's it. That's it. You know, when you're going into battle on stuff like that,
Yeah.
you have to want to do it for the other guys.
And not a me. Let me see my
Exactly.
stats stuff. And we've seen it kind of
All the
evolve
time.
that way.
Yeah, you see it all the time.
Especially now. I hate guys when they bring the score sheet to the press conference and they start
They're looking up their
looking up their stats. I hate that because it's not about the team.
Right. Right.
But it is what it is. And you've seen so many games. We'll talk more about your favorite interviews, favorite stories that you covered, that you wrote, because you had a lot of them in the 80s, a few in the 90s, I think it was. And compare notes because we competed against each other for a
We
year or
did
two.
for a while. For a couple,
couple
we were on
years.
opposite sides covering football
Mhm.
and stuff like that. So there's a
I
lot of
missed
stuff
that.
going on.
I missed that. I don't know if you missed that because I missed one of the reasons I enjoyed doing what I was doing is I love competition.
Right.
Now it's
And and while we were competing, we were going after the same stories and trying to beat each other up in the paper every day. We still had good friendships there. We
Mhm.
were we were all friends.
Yeah.
We were all friends.
but we didn't want to get beat.
But dang, did I want to kick your butt on a story?
yeah, of course, because we were all trying the same thing or whatever. But that's part of the nature of the business.
Right. It was the nature of the business. Unfortunately, it's not the nature of the business anymore. But you know what? We can still have a lot of fun with it, and there's still a lot of stories to tell. And you know what? I've got so many. I can hardly wait to let them all out. But I also want to talk about the issues of
Yeah.
the day, and we'll definitely be doing that.
So this is your first hour. It goes by fast, doesn't it?
It goes by really fast.
Yeah.
It goes by really fast. But I'm loving it. I'm ready to do it again.
Great. Well, we'll see you Monday.
I'll be here Monday.
We'll have other Tom in the building. Thank you, Tom Senor. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Tom.
Well, gosh, thank you guys. It was fun. I enjoyed listening.
Great. Well, thanks everybody for listening here on Friday night. We'll talk to you guys, Jay and I, on Monday.
Have a great weekend.